welcome back to another episode of the Between the Lines podcast. Today, we'll be taking a look at the NBA landscape from the perspective of a general manager. Criteria that we will be considering for evaluating teams will be current roster talent and assets, head coach evaluation, salary cap and ownership group info, market size, as well as future draft picks owned. But before we do that, we're going to go right into some sports time machine. So on June 2nd of 1941, Lou Gehrig died of ALS at the age of 37 years old. RIP Lou Gehrig.
Tiago?
This one is kind of sour for me. I hate to say it, but this day in 2011, the Mavs outscored the Heat 22-5 down the stretch, and they pull off one of the biggest comebacks winning NBA Finals. Actually, the biggest one since '92 at the time.
Tough. Go Mavs. All right. On this day, the Red Sox and Yankees legend Babe Ruth retires. So there you go.
All right, let's just dive right into this here. How about you take it away at number one, Kyle?
All right. So first team I looked at was the Phoenix Suns. There's a lot going on with the Suns, and from a general manager standpoint, I think it's a team we could really work with. They got a young coach, and like with the talent they have on the roster, it's kind of frustrating. Like you want to see them do a little better. So when I watch the Suns, I'm kind of like iffy, but he is still a new coach, so I think we give him a little bit more time and see where they go from there. And then as far as like players on the team, I think they need to continue to add more players, more valuable players. They're starting to find people that are working in their rotation, like Kelly Oubre. And then just with they have no like trades coming in with their draft picks, but I think they're going to be 10th this year in the pick or in the draft. So hopefully they can grab somebody. I think the new group of players coming in is going to be a good pick or a good draft to pick from. So that's my little take on the Suns.
I'll take over on this one. The first team I chose to talk about from the GM point of view was the Knicks. It's funny because the Knicks have been through this rebuilding process for a while. And I think one of the most important factors that's been hurting the Knicks is their failures when it comes to draft day. So, picks like Frank Ntilikina, I don't even know how to say his name.
That one guy with the hard last name to pronounce.
Hasn't been down yet. Their last pick, Kevin Knox, before RJ Barrett, of course. Kevin Knox hasn't been like developing enough yet to. I truly believe in RJ Barrett's potential, though. But if I had to make a decision, since we have a pick next year for this year's draft, and we also have the Clippers pick, I'd try to pull off the trigger and focusing on getting a franchise player. If I had the chance to pull off like a LaMelo Ball to play the point guard and having like Alfred Payton or Dennis Smith Jr. coming off the bench, that would be a good move to start with. And let's not forget that the Knicks still have some cap space since they were not able to sign Durant and Kyrie Irving as their plans for this current season. So yeah, unfortunately, it didn't happen for them. But I would for sure get rid of Julius Randle. I think he's just not the player to go forward with. And I'd keep Mitchell Robinson as one of our core players, as I think he's going to develop as a great center. Definitely focus on developing RJ Barrett and get like a player like LaMelo Ball to play alongside RJ. And keep players around like Dennis Smith Jr. or Alfred Payton.
I think those are some great points. I like your point about the center, dude. He's a beast. They should keep him and stack some pieces around him. But
Definitely.
For the first team I looked at the Boston Celtics. I think we can all agree. You talk about championships on championships, just a historic franchise in the NBA. And that Boston area is a great sports market. They bleed for the Patriots. They love the Celtics. They love the Red Sox. So that sports fandom's always going to be there. In terms of cap, they were about 30 million over, but as we've talked about with cap, in the NBA, it's soft cap, so you can kind of tinker with your roster structure, and in terms of like payouts for contracts, you can add bonuses, or you can find a way to do sign and trades and kind of work around that. But you look at the 2020 draft, and the Celtics, as of right now, will have 3 draft picks there, one being their own, and 2 of which will come from the Grizzlies and Suns. So those picks are key, right? The Celtics can either try and flip one of those picks or 2 of those picks into getting another bona fide star that they can pair up with Jason Tatum, Marcus Smart, Kemba Walker, and why am I blanking on the last one? Jalen Brown. Those players, because if you can get that nucleus, that could go crazy if you add like another real star. I know they were talking about Anthony Davis kind of before he got traded to the Lakers, but the trade pieces they have in terms of draft capital are real. And I also look at it from the point of view of Brad Stevens being the coach there in Boston. I think he really gets the most out of his players. And when it comes to, last game moments, whether it's the final seconds or just drawing up the right play at the right time, I think he's really on point, and he'll be the guy to lead that team moving forward. So as if I were a GM looking at opportunities, I'd say the Boston Celtics are looking pretty good.
Nice. All right. Also, just back to the Knicks, it kind of sucks that on draft day or free agency or whatever, it always goes wrong. But in this case, it turned out great for my team, so we're not worried. All right. So this second one is one it's just so frustrating to watch this team just do anything, and it's the Charlotte Hornets. Can y'all agree with that?
Yes, fully.
All right, so I mean, you look at the Hornets, like you want to be a fan of them, like how can you hate them? They're Charlotte Hornets, they don't do anything that's terrible or whatever. It's so tough to try to support them, when they do crazy stuff, and then a main problem that's been something that stuck with them for the last 5 years is Nick Batum's contract. Worst contract ever. So what he signed 5 years in 2016, he signed 5 years, 120 million, and he's just not produced anything. And I mean, he's just hasn't done anything. So it's tough. And then, looking at the rest of the roster, when you look at this team on paper, or like, not watching the games or whatever, you would think it's a decent team. It's just when they get out on the court, it's just a lot of struggles. So they do have a good young star in Devontae Graham. They have a lot of young players around them, right? But I mean, you got to add something in free agency, and they haven't been able to do that because of their situation with that contract. I think that's really killed them. So,
and it's not a big market in Charlotte, so it's kind of hard to
but
convince.
it's kind of growing though, like they're starting to add more things, like they added a soccer team now, they're adding more things around the city. So, a lot of stuff is growing.
I agree with you, but I think to be able to gather players in free agency for Charlotte, you need Devontae Graham and PJ Washington to show some potential, like for players wanting to play with them, as future stars for the team.
I mean, you don't think Devontae Graham is like showing that that's a player you want to play around?
Oh,
I mean,
yeah,
he just started. He just
but,
started in the league, so.
I'm just saying it's not like the main focus right now. Like he's not the best young prospect on the team. That's what I'm saying. Like if they give that extra step to bring like some power to Charlotte, that would definitely convince other players to join, I believe.
All right, before you hop on with yours here, Tiago, I got 2 points. The first point is, goddamn, Michael Jordan was a great basketball player, but he can't own a fucking team to save his life.
Not at all.
The incompetence is unbelievable, I tell you. And then the second point is, off of what Tiago is saying, I am an upper level player in the NBA, or I'm a star in the NBA. Give me one goddamn reason why I should take my talents to Charlotte.
Exactly.
They can't get a major star right now. That's not the point. You can't go and look for a major star right now. You obviously have to build up more pieces around, and you have to start building a winning culture. You can't just, unless you're LA or you're New York or you're Brooklyn or whatever, presentable market, you can't just expect a player to just come and be like, oh, I'm gonna sign for the Hornets. So they're not going out looking for that. And as a GM, you can't go out and look for that star player. Of course, it'd be nice. That's just being realistic. That's not what's going to happen. You got to start building
Hmm.
winning cultures and all that. So you start with those
But
young players and you hope that they turn into what you're looking for.
so I think we
Mhm.
could all agree for the Charlotte Hornets, it really comes down to not missing in the draft. They have to start hitting on these players and these lottery
And that's
picks
the
because
problem. That's all they do. They miss in the
exactly
draft. So
Yeah.
because they're
That
not gonna if they keep missing in the draft, free agents aren't coming.
no,
yes.
not at all.
No, I mean, who wants to play with Malik Monk instead of playing like for a bigger franchise? You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying
Yeah.
Malik Monk is a bad player. I'm just saying he's not good enough to call an all-star to play for them. But I definitely agree with you. I think like it has the same level of importance as the market city itself. If you have, for example, I remember when Anthony Davis was playing for the Pelicans. New Orleans is not a big market for basketball, but there were actually a couple of players like Cousins that wanted to play with him in the Pelicans by that time. So I feel like having like a superstar in your team, even if your city is not the biggest, like Karl Anthony Towns in the team in the Timberwolves, you know, like D'Lo actually enjoying playing there right now. I know he was traded, but still, like D'Lo expressed like he was happy playing in Minnesota just because there was another superstar there. Like I don't imagine D'Lo having fun in Minnesota if it wasn't like Karl Anthony
No,
Towns was not there. So
it's all on
definitely,
draft night, and they got the number 8 pick,
What
so we'll see.
yeah.
hey, what does Lil Yachty say? It gets cold in Minnesota? Something like
Yeah,
Or
that,
never.
right?
I don't know, man. It's been a while since Minnesota has like a very solid team, and I'm surprised. Like, I don't think nobody's gonna mention it today, but I don't know, man. It's just funny. I just remember when Ricky Rubio was picked over Steph Curry, man. Let's just let's just
Oh, that's there's so
Dude,
many draft picks that come back to haunt people.
back to back point guard picks. They
they
picked two point
drafted two
guards.
point guards, Johnny
Yes.
Flynn and Ricky Rubio. And Ricky Rubio's been so, and nobody's heard of Johnny Flynn in the last 8 years.
I think he was just in the league for like 2 years or so. Johnny Flynn, I
Didn't
believe.
last
Yeah,
long.
yeah,
Yeah,
nah,
Ricky is solid,
certified
but
bum.
I mean, Ricky Rubio is not Steph Curry. Anyways, uh, getting forward with this, my next team is actually the same thing. Like I just said, you don't have to have a big city to attract players to come play for this team, and I think it's going to happen in Memphis for the future. So the current situation with the Grizzlies, man, I think this is one of the best young cores, mixed with a couple of what if players. So we got John Morant that I mean, totally, he's going to be an all-star. He already proved us that. Altogether with Jaren Jackson Jr. And Dylan Brooks, they already proved themselves. I feel like this is the big three of the Grizzlies, and it has a lot of potential for the future. But we cannot forget about these what-if players that can still become very good. And I'm talking about Jonas Valanciunas, Josh Jackson, and Justice Winslow. So if I was GM of this team, I would keep these three players for this simple reason. Josh Jackson proved that he can be a very good player. Like he can put up like 20 points a game if he is in his right state of mind. Because Josh Jackson just seems like to be one of those players that loses his mind very quickly. Kind of a Michael Beasley type of player when it comes to um, not caring enough about grinding and being a better basketball player and caring more about your social life and outside life. Because Josh Jackson seems like one of those players that just doesn't have the mental effect or the mental capacity to be an NBA player. But if he puts it together, it's actually a pretty good small forward for this team. Justice Winslow's been cursed with injuries, but I actually liked him on the Heat. And when he started playing point guard, I actually thought he had a big improvement in his game. So I think this guy coming off the bench for Ja Morant is perfect. I mean, they're both young. Justice can like revive his career in Memphis. And when it comes to Valanciunas, the trade for him and Marc Gasol was definitely good for the Raptors in short terms, but I think Valanciunas is going to become a better player than Marc Gasol for the long stretch. We cannot forget this guy is still young. Um, he's a stretch forward, so he can stretch the field, he can shoot the ball, and the guy just has like a couple of skills that he shows in Toronto, and he can still prove to be a good center for the Grizzlies. So my plan for this team is just like I wouldn't say just wait because they're already fighting for the playoffs, But you might get like they don't have a first round pick for next year, but because they traded with the Celtics, but maybe a second rounder. Just get these pieces to complement your team because you already got nice players coming off the bench. You got players with great potential, and you also have another player that I'd like to mention, Grayson Allen. We haven't seen much from him yet, but the kid is actually a pretty solid shooter if he's given the chance. He proved that in college. So with all of these what ifs and already established players, I think it's just a matter of waiting and trying to get smaller pieces out of the draft for the last years and not focusing on free agency for sure.
Definitely.
I think the point that you make is really good. Is the Grizzlies are in a great position moving forward with the youth they have, and Valanciunas has had one of his best years statistically. If Winslow can stay healthy, that's a major key. But the funny thing is, they honestly overachieved this year. Because if you think about it, if they had done significantly worse, they would have had another high draft pick. Obviously, you never want to do worse as an NBA team,
Exactly.
but just they're ahead of schedule, is what I'm trying to say. Nobody would have thought that they would have been biting for that 8 seed in the playoffs before the season started.
I mean, that's literally Ja Morant proving himself as a superstar, as somebody who can like make the whole difference as soon as he gets to the team. Like he's the change that this team needed. I mean, him paired up with Jaren Jackson Jr. is just a scary duo for the future. I think like being GM of the Grizzlies right now is like the perfect job in the world. You just gotta sit back, enjoy your latest draft pick, watch them carry you to the playoffs or almost carry you to the playoffs in the first season that you draft them, and just watch them develop. It's the perfect time to be GM for the Grizzlies, and we should really appreciate the work they have been doing this last year.
I
One
mean,
hundred
think about
percent.
this though. Isn't
Mhm.
that such a great feeling as a GM that you make this pick at 2, and he went 2, right?
Yes.
All right. So you make
Yeah.
that pick at 2, and then you watch it pay off in this year. Like that's got to
Yeah,
be like an amazing feeling.
especially after you get rid of the franchise players. So as soon as Mike Conley left, the Grizzlies have been like the target for many criticism. Like the same with Marc Gasol, but like it all pinned out well. You know what I'm saying? Like Mike Conley leaving and Ja Morant coming up just made everybody forget the fact that Mike Conley is not playing for this team anymore. It's actually Mike Conley is playing bad for the Utah Jazz. So great call for the Grizzlies. That's just perfect for them. It's a perfect move.
100%. Oh, last thing I want to say though, I think the Jonas Valanciunas trade for
Yeah.
Memphis worked out perfect. He was already, it wasn't his best years in Toronto, but I mean, he was still playing good. I respect him as a player in Toronto. So seeing him leave leave the Raptors, I thought like, dang, it kind of sucked, but it worked out on the Grizzlies. So
Worked
you
for
see it's
both
paying off.
sides. The Toronto Raptors wanted
Exactly.
to win that year, and Marc Gasol was in one of his last very productive years. So he definitely contributed more for Toronto than Valanciunas would in that season. But for the long stretch, I think the Grizzlies will end up like winning this trade for sure.
100%.
You said it very well, Tiago, in terms of the Raptors won immediately in the present in terms of
Mhm.
getting that solid vet at center that can provide leadership and also, hit clutch buckets and free throws down the stretch in a playoff run. And the Grizzlies won in terms of just having a center who's only 28 years old right now, who's
Yes.
steadily improved almost every year in the league. So it worked out for them both just really well.
Listen, this is the basics of being a GM, in my opinion. Is if you're having a team that plans to develop for the future, you trade away your best player for the young core of another team. For example, the Lakers wanted to win immediately, so they traded away Lonzo Ball and Josh Hart and Brandon Ingram for Anthony Davis. And I'm saying like that trade is good for both sides. You know what I'm saying? Like the Pelicans have a brighter future right now, and the Lakers are ready to win right now. So that's what a GM should do. You should be able to analyze your team and think, hey, I'm not ready to win yet. I'm not ready to like just risk it all. So I'm just gonna try to get young pieces and get rid of my old vets or like this superstar player that has just not been working for us, and get a couple of young players to develop for the future. So that's what happened with the Grizzlies and Marc Gasol, and with the Lakers. And I could just give 100 more examples of this being done in the right way.
Right. That being said, Take it to the 305 land, the Miami Heat. Where should we start with the Heat? The Heat play in a decent basketball market. I think this is very much true of Miami in general. When things are going well and shit's hot, people are going to show up. But as I've seen in years past, when the Heat kind of have downturns or just poor seasons in general, you kind of look in the stands, you see a lot of empty seats. So I think that's just something to keep in mind in like a market like Miami and even New York from time to time. When it's going well, the people will be there. When it's not, you might not get the outcome you want. In terms of cap space, the Heat are 65 million over the soft cap. As we talked about it, you can always find ways to work around that. In terms of bad contracts they have on the books, the guy that's the worst contract actually no longer plays on the team. Dion Waiters, they cut him. But in the next 2 years, he still stands to make about $24 million. So that's never good when you're paying that much money for a guy you don't want on your team anymore. One of the things that I have questions about moving forward is Bam Adebayo's contract. He's coming obviously before the season got postponed. It was his first year as an all-star. His numbers have been great, and he's really just taking the next steps as a center and just player in the league. A lot of people are, possibly predicting that he might be eligible for a max contract. Where that kind of gets tricky is in terms of whether the Heat are going to go after the Giannis Antetokounmpo sweepstakes here when he's a 2021 unrestricted free agent. That gets tricky because if you give Bam a max, then you got a lot of money tied up with core players. But that'll be interesting to observe. But in terms of what to be optimistic about and kind of have hope for the Heat moving forward in the future, is they have a lot of young players that have showed real potential. Guys like Kendrick Nunn, guys like Duncan Robinson, guys like Derrick Jones Jr., Tyler Hero. And then you have that steady presence of vets, people like Goran Dragic, Jimmy Butler, Kelly Olynyk. Like there's just a solid balance of young and vet in that team, and they found a way to just really play good basketball this year. But I think what the real step will be for the Heat is they're gonna make a blockbuster here in the next year or two. I can't say if it's gonna be Giannis or not, but we talk about players like Bradley Beal. He's on their radar. Giannis is on the radar, and my outside chance is Donovan Mitchell. Donovan
Hell
Mitchell to
yeah.
the Heat
Ooh.
could go crazy. I was thinking about it. I was really thinking about it today, and I just want to end with the Heat in terms of Pat Riley has shown in the past that he's not afraid to take chances and put his chips out on the table when it comes to stacking a roster that can really make a run at a finals appearance. You saw that with the Heatles, with Ray Allen, LeBron, D Wade, and I think you'll see that again here in the next year or two. And when it comes to the coach, Eric Spoelstra is just a legend. Not many guys go from video coordinator to head coach. So if you're a Heat fan, I think you have a lot of positives looking forward in the future.
Heck yeah, we do.
Straight
Oh
up,
man,
man.
No,
I
I,
like that.
I totally agree with you. As a Heat fan, I wanted to like let you see it because I feel like if I was talking about the Heat myself, it'd be a lot biased. So it's great to see
Right.
someone that's not a Heat fan talk about this as a GM point of view. And I mean, just the winning culture of the team, man. They're willing to do it all to bring it back. And Pat Riley and Eric Spoelstra, they did work. They just work. Pat Riley knows how to get the players. Eric Spoelstra knows how to work with them. So definitely, I'd love to see Donovan Mitchell play for us, man. Out of those three, I gotta admit, like I know Giannis is like that player, but I would love to have Donovan Mitchell, man, playing for us, bro. That's a jersey I would buy, like 100%.
That'd be
The
kind of
beast,
tough,
bro.
though. Donovan
Oh
Mitchell
For
out there.
real.
It's kind
man,
of got me
Seriously.
thinking though, right? So like because of this whole situation, it's either Donovan Mitchell is going to be out soon, or
Rudy
they're
Gobert.
shipping Rudy Gobert out. So
Gobert is
Yes,
on the way out.
yes.
yeah, I mean, maybe he's
And
fed up. Maybe he'll be fed up. Maybe he wants to go to Miami. Things you just got to see down the road.
Rudy
and
Gobert is
then I
important.
I kind of look at it like this too in terms of I don't know Donovan Mitchell. I can't speak to his mindset. Obviously, it came out into the news that he was pretty frustrated with how Gobert acted in terms of being irresponsible about the coronavirus and just general health and safety, just as well. But you look at a market like Utah compared to Miami. Come on, you tell me some young guy that's 23, 24 years old, you be stuck in Utah in Salt Lake, or you want to go down to 305 and party on the beach. So I don't know. It looks
That's true.
appealing to me from the outside in.
That is true.
Facts. The last
Taking
thing I
your
gotta say
talent to
too.
South Beach.
Yeah. Last thing I gotta say, I don't know if Giannis is gonna go there. I don't know.
Nah, he's gonna stay in
Once again, you
Milwaukee.
never know. You never know. I'll
He's
let it
staying in
be.
Milwaukee.
But I don't know if he'd go to Miami. But
I think he stays in Milwaukee.
I
Giannis
think he
looks like
stays.
a loyal guy.
I think
looks
he
like a
stays in
loyal guy.
Milwaukee. I think he stays in Milwaukee as well. But I do believe that if there's any team that he'd be willing to consider in terms of leaving the great situation that he's in now with the Bucks, I think it would have to either be the Warriors or the Heat. Probably there's no real other contenders in my mind
No,
than those two teams.
that's for sure. But like no other team would give Giannis what he wants, like the Bucks do. Like they even hire his brother Thanasis that was playing for the G League. And like let's be honest, the guy's just not good enough for an NBA roster right now. But I mean, the Bucks just do everything for Giannis, and we cannot complain about the way they're building around Giannis because the Bucks are actually a very nice contender right now to win an NBA title. So I think it would be a bad move for Giannis to leave the Bucks right now. They're doing everything to keep him. So
Yeah,
free agency will be interesting.
Always is.
All right. So my last one that I want to talk about is OKC. All right. So OKC is very interesting. They started they're a small market, but they ended up doing amazing, being that they had such an amazing player and amazing players from the jump, right, when they moved. And then it was kind of like this shaky period between like Paul George and all that nonsense, right? And now here we are with Chris Paul leading the team, and somehow they're fifth in the West. So it's so interesting. You have a lot of you have a lot of good players around them. Shai Alexander, you have a crazy good backup point guard and Dennis Schroeder. And to me, one of the most reliable big men is Steven Adams. So it's a very interesting team, and they don't have any draft picks. No, they have one first round draft pick, but it's kind of interesting. Like, where do you go from here? Like, how are you gonna keep pulling players in, or are you like a temporary stop for certain players? So it's something that I'd want to see them work on a little bit more. Trying to bring in some more people there because obviously they built up their name to where people would want to go to the Thunder for a while, and then you have this player in Chris Paul if he decides to stay for an extended amount of years. So that's just kind of my thoughts on the Thunder.
I think Chris Paul is like their trading card right now. Like if you
Think
want to
so?
go, if you want to get a last young piece, like I said before, trade Chris Paul for a team that wants to contend right now and make a title run right now, and they will give you a couple of young prospects. So that's the win-win situation. But yeah, if Chris Paul stays, definitely it's a good thing for OKC. So it's a win-win situation for them for sure.
And then just to tap in real quick on OKC, I think points that are relevant here is I wouldn't say Paul George is a distraction, but I am not a huge advocate of Russell Westbrook. I don't deny the talent. The man's an animal, and he sacrifices his body to go out there and get it every night, and he gives you his all. But I think just in a number of ways, he's a distraction to a lot of the things that you want to get done to be a successful team on the floor.
Yeah.
And I think it's funny when you eliminate the distractions and you have solid players like Steven Adams, Danilo Gallinari, Shea Alexander, and you just go hoop night in, night out. And look at what it got him, a 5th seed. And also the last point I'll say is think about all the trade pieces they have for that trade they made with the Clippers when Paul George got sent to the Clippers. So they're going to have opportunities to either trade those draft picks or keep adding young players to kind of keep building that thing out there in OKC.
Yeah, for sure, man. Getting forward with this thing, I'm really excited to talk about this team right now. If you asked me if I could choose a job in the NBA right now as a GM, I would pick this team for sure, just for the simple reason that I really believe in the potential of the team. And I became like a small fan of the franchise because of just one player. I'm talking about the Washington Wizards and John Wall situation. So I went really deep on my analysis as a GM of this team. I even run like a couple of simulations, like I talk with you guys on 2K, Try to make it as realistic as possible to know what's the current situation with the cap space, with the like trading players, the next free agencies and the drafts. So first point is, do we want to continue with John Wall or not? Because he's taking a big chunk of our salary cap, and he's the main reason why we cannot sign a free agent. Because I'm pretty sure, like if we had the space for another free agent, and you could tell somebody to come play with John Wall and Bradley Beal, I mean, let's be real. On the East right now, they would be like an instant contender. If you get a player like, imagine like you guys mentioned Rudy Gobert to come play for them and make a big three with John Wall, Bradley Beal, and Rui Hachimura growing as a player, that would be like an instant impact on the league. So first things first, do we want to go and continue with John Wall or not? Because I feel if we trade John Wall right now, we're not going to get as much value as he deserves, because the guy's been injured. He hasn't played this whole season. He hasn't played half of the last season. So if I want to be really wise right here, I wouldn't trade John Wall right away. For the simple fact that I don't think we're going to get value enough for him. We'd probably get like a second round pick and a player or a young prospect. That's true, but I just don't think teams are willing to give for John Wall. And I still think he has like a lot of potential coming back to the league. He said he's 100% ready to come back. And I mean, it's John Wall. He's always going to be a defensive impact on the field. And his offense, although it's not going to be as explosive as before, John Wall can still make a difference as a point guard. So in my opinion, we go with John Wall and Bradley Beal, and we have a pick next year. So a first round pick. So if we didn't keep John Wall, I'd say from the positions that the Wizards are right now, the prospect that was most realistic to pick for us would be Cole Anthony, because he would probably still be on the board, and it's definitely a nice point guard for the future. I think Cole Anthony is going to have a huge impact on the league. But if you want to keep John Wall, and for some reason James Wiseman gets to fall a little bit on the board for the Wizards, it's an instant pick. Like if we get James Wiseman, that's already a huge impact. And I believe like even if we can play it at center, or even if we play him at power forward together with Thomas Bryant, that I also think is a player that can still develop to be at least a decent center. Because let's not forget, Thomas Bryant had a pretty nice run last season, and he's showing some flashes this season about what he can do. I mean, Wiseman as a future prospect, and Rui Hachimura. We keep Bradley Beal, who's already he's an all-star. Although he didn't go to the all-star game this year, he's definitely an all-star. And we got John Wall back. That's a pretty nice plan for the future, and we don't have to mess up with the salary cap. We don't have to get undervalued picks or players for John Wall, and we just keep grinding on this path that we started a couple of years ago when we drafted Bradley Beal to pair up with John Wall. So I think this is the most reasonable solution. And another one is, in the case that Rudy Gobert thing actually happens and he wants to leave Utah, trade away our first round pick. Like if it's not good enough to pick James Wiseman, if it's not that high of a pick, trade away that first round pick for Rudy Gobert and a couple more assets, and bring on Rudy Gobert to play alongside John Wall and Bradley Beal, and try to make a run for it. You know, it's already an established big three for the East, at least.
I have 3 points about the Wizards that I'd like to make. The first point is, I'm gonna preface this with this: I am a huge John Wall fan. When he's healthy and he's moving and cruising on the floor, I love what he can do on the offensive side and defensive side of the ball. Obviously, you wish he could shoot the ball a little bit better from the outside, but you can't always get what you want. But in terms of looking at his contract, objectively, he has the worst contract in the NBA right now. You look at it and you think, look at the injuries that he's coming off of. Who knows what he's going to be able to give you? I read something the other day where he said he's 110% healthy, but what does that actually translate and look like on the floor? And my last point about the Wizards is, whether he'll admit this or not, Bradley Beal is fucking tired of what's going on in Washington. Bradley is wasting the prime years of his career in a franchise that's dysfunctional, not stacking real players around him. And if it keeps up, like, he's gone. So I think you made some great points, Tiago, but if it's really going to happen for the Wizards, they need to like put this shit into drive right now.
They do, but before you say anything, Kyle, I'm sorry. I'm just saying, for the current situation of the Wizards, I don't think it's beneficial to trade John Wall when he doesn't have enough value. Like if you're
I
gonna
hear
trade
that.
him now, you're just not gonna get enough for him. And imagine like he's actually like good enough to play at a higher level. You're just gonna feel bad as the GM. You just gave away John Wall for peanuts, and you're still not building around Bradley Beal. So I'd say just believe in Wall just for one more season and try to get either Wiseman or Rudy Gobert for the paint. And that's it. That's a good move to go to the future.
So real quick, what pick does Washington have? Do you
I
know?
mean,
Are they like top 5 or anything, or
They got to be in the top 6 or 7. I
I
couldn't tell
think
you the,
so.
the
I don't know.
full
I don't
standing,
think.
but
Well, I don't think James Wiseman is going to drop past 3.
3.
So if they're
Yeah.
not 3, which they aren't, I don't think he's going to drop past 3. But it's so weird. So I'm gonna say this as like kind of a Nets fan, but like still like helping helping out the Wizards. Why
Mhm.
won't you? They should just ship out Brad Bill, give him to Brooklyn, like everybody was talking about. I'd
Oh
be
my
happy,
God.
whatever. But then you got to think about it too. Like I'm pretty sure Brooklyn is not the best in making their trades, so they might end up giving away how many picks. So they could end up getting mad picks for the future, and they could like start their little rebuilding thing there. So maybe a win for Brooklyn. I would love it, and then maybe you get some picks out of it. Who knows? But then also my concern is how easy or how hard would it be to trade John Wall away? Or like
I think
they
it's hard right now.
yeah, I
Very,
don't think
like, very hard. Very is an
Sure.
understatement.
That
because
contract,
who
bro.
everybody's so iffy on him too, like
Yeah,
it's not even that he's like a bad player. It's just like there's just a lot of ifs with that.
that's a
So
lot of what ifs. A lot of people can lose their job if they trade for John Wall and he's actually bad. So I don't think many teams will take that risk. What I'm saying is I understand your point of view. Definitely, like if you trade Bradley Beal, you can get a lot of assets from him. But just remember that with the Wizards 2 years ago, they were competing. They were competing. They were actually contenders in the East, and they actually challenged. They made a huge series against Isaiah Thomas and the Boston Celtics, and I still remember it. But what I'm saying is like if you're keeping John Wall, you got to win now. Like if you trade Bill away, you're not planning to win now. And I'm not saying like win a championship because it's obviously hard to be the best team in the NBA right now. But if you want to compete in the East, and I'll remind you again, John Wall and Bradley Beal were competing in the East legitimately. You need to win now. You got to give one more shot to John Wall, and that requires Bradley Beal and Rudy Gobert. I'd say.
Bill
Like
So
man, Brad Bill to the Nets.
I asked a similar question about, it's a different question, but similar in some contexts. I said, if you're a free agent or, upper echelon or a star, why would I go to Charlotte? And the same thing applies to this question. If you're a
because you got Bradley
GM
Beal.
or if you're a GM or a front office representative for
Mhm.
any team and you decide to make a trade for John Wall, who's going to attach their job security to trading for John Wall? Right?
No,
Nobody's going to do that
nobody.
in their right mind. So I think
Exactly.
that's what it comes down to, and that shows you how difficult it would be for the Wizards to try and pull off a trade for Wall at the moment.
Exactly. And I never said like that's why I said we shouldn't trade Wall right now. We should like use Wall and see what it can still bring on the floor, keep Bradley Beal and just get one more piece. Because like I said, these two guys were competing in the East before John Wall's injury. So if John Wall comes back healthy, God knows they can be competing again. So it's a win now situation. It's not like we're planning for the future. Like the other teams I mentioned, the Knicks and the Grizzlies, they're not like a win-win now team because they have a young roster. But John Wall, I mean, if you want to play John Wall, it's now. Like he's not going to be better in the future, And you use Bradley Beal's prime. You just need one more piece.
Yeah, to kind of conclude, unless you guys have anything else on the Wizards, the way I feel about it is because of what you're saying, and it is true that John Wall's trade value is so low right now, the
Mhm.
Wizards, they really just need to give it one more year with Bradley Beal and John Wall, see what occurs in that year before making any hasty decisions about the future of both of those players.
Yes, and if that year, even if you don't contend, imagine like that year, just to conclude the things, John Wall actually has a nice season, but it's just not enough to be a contender. that raises the value of John Wall again, because right now his value is nothing because of the injury. So, like you said, give him one more
Exactly.
season. Well, it's a win-win situation. Either John Wall is good enough to contend again, or John Wall just at least proves that he has some value in the league to be traded, of course.
There we go, audience. That's our season recap of the Wizards season and what needs to happen in the future. Moving on to my number 3 team, the Denver Nuggets. You look at the market that the Nuggets play in. It's kind of middle of the pack. Definitely more of a football market. They love their Broncos out there. But the thing about Nuggets and their fans is when the team's doing well, people will show up in bunches and they will get loud and they will support. When it comes to the cap situation, they're about 70 million over the soft cap, which isn't great. As we said, you can always play with that. One thing that I will say about the Nuggets is they don't really have any bad contracts on the records. If you really wanted to be nitpicky, you could say that Plumlee is not a great contract. He's making about 14, 15 mil a year, and he doesn't play too much strictly because of the fact that he's coming off the bench for one of the best centers in the league, Jokic. If he was with any other team, he'd be getting more minutes. There's no question about it. And when it comes to the draft picks they own in the 2020 draft, they actually traded away their own, but they got a first-round draft pick from the Rockets in the trade that sent – it was a 4-team trade, but what left Denver was Malik Beasley, who went over there to Minnesota with D'Lo and those other players. But looking at the present and the future, where I see the Nuggets' real opportunities are, it's simple. Jamal Murray is a star. Jokic is a star. And then waiting in the wings, you think about a guy that didn't get drafted as high as he should have, strictly because of an injury at the University of Missouri. He comes into the league. He takes a whole year off, even this year, slowly working him in, not pressing him too much, just letting him find a comfort zone and a rhythm. Michael Porter Jr., the guy was ranked in his high school senior class, I believe number 1 or 2 for a reason. He's a baller. Like at all levels of the floor, he can do things. Can do it down in the post with his size. He can get buckets in the mid-range, and he can also step back and splash. So that's a third star right there if he develops into what he's capably potential of. So I think those pieces are legitimate. And if I'm a Nuggets fan moving forward, if you can add a piece or two more in free agency, or you can find a way to kind of, reel in one of those high level free agents, you have a real squad. They have a real squad now, but competing in the West isn't easy. There's a lot of powerhouses you have to get by. So I do like them moving forward, but shit's hard in the West. I'll say that.
You
Definitely.
hit so many important points, but just look at their previous draft picks, bro. Like Jokic was a second rounder, and Michael Porter Jr. was a sleeper pick because everybody was just skipping on him. And then they traded for Bol. Bol is still there, man. I know that Bol is is very injury prone, and the guy looks like a slender man, but I he can shoot the ball outside. He's a stretch center. Like he can make an impact too. And playing with a center like Jokic, they can make some fun stuff in the team. You know what I'm saying? Like some different shit with their big men. So Denver has just been on point when it comes to draft day. They just make the right moves. They take nice risks, and it's been that well. Because like you said, MPJ has been showing some flashes of greatness for short runs in the NBA because they haven't risked him enough yet. But I think when the time comes for them to compete in the playoffs, boy, that team's gonna look scary. They are gonna look scary.
You got anything, Kyle?
Nah, man, I like that team. I think Michael Porter Jr. is gonna be a killer when he's 100%. He's really in it and he's playing the full season. I think it's gonna be a killer on that team. So I'm just excited to see that happen. I think it's a great market too. So I really like the Nuggets. So I rock.
Yeah. One last
Yeah,
thing.
the last.
I'd
Go
like
ahead.
them to get Melo. This is a fun thing to see, but I'd like Melo to
Melo
end his
full
career.
circle back to the Nuggets.
Yeah, I thought that as soon as you spoke about the Nuggets, I thought imagine if Melo just came for one last season. to make a run with the Nuggets on the playoffs. That would be fucking poetic, man. Just using that 15 again, that's legendary, man. That's some legendary shit.
Yeah, 100%. To wrap up on the Nuggets, a point that I wanted to make too is I think there's a few really solid to really above average players on that team that kind of get overlooked. You look at a guy like Paul Millsap, a guy like Will Barton, Mason Plumlee, and Gary Harris. Yeah, maybe the statistical output isn't, astronomical, but you look at what they provide to that team in a number of different statistical categories, night in, night out. Like they make a difference. And I think that's the thing that a lot of people really disregard when it comes to success in the NBA and just franchises that are on the up and up and really have chances to go to the finals. You got to have those players at 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 that you can count on them. You can rely on them. They'll come in each night and do their job. And I think Denver has those players and they do those things. And I think it's tied with the perfect bow with the head coach, Michael Malone. He seems that he's able to manage. Doesn't seem like there's many you know, overactive personalities there in Denver, but he just seems like he's able to just manage everything so swiftly. Always seems calm on the sidelines, and I think he's a great fit in there in Denver. I know it didn't work out in SAC previously, but I think they got the pieces, they got the coach. Now it's just about the steps that they take this offseason and next year. And I don't know, the West is tough, but maybe that's a finals team in a year, 2 or 3.
Definitely.
Maybe. Should
Sorry
we
to
breeze through one team or should we?
Yeah.
What do you
What do we got?
think? All right, so this is a team I was thinking about since we started this, and it wasn't one I like started thinking about or like wrote down any notes about. It's just somebody I really wanted to mention, and it's the Warriors. I
Hmm.
don't know how they are so perfect. Like, and it's so crazy that I'm saying this even in a year where they're the worst team. Like, things just work out, and they're still gonna have their star player, and now they're they're set up to draft another star player at the first pick. So it's going to be so interesting to see how they come back next year. And then also the thing that's been driving me crazy is what's going to happen in this Giannis sweepstakes. So we were talking about it earlier, and I just there's so many ways they can go about doing that if they decide to do that. It'd be so interesting. But I know that things are going to work out because somehow with the second round picks they're going to end up forming a crazy good bench. Also, they have great players already. Things are just they're just a great organization, great basketball city. Of course, we all live in. So that's just my quick little spiel on the Warriors.
I think that's a perfect way to
Absolutely.
wrap this up since we're all in San Francisco. I mean, Max has been in Oakland when the Warriors were still in Oakland. So, but I mean, perfect. The perfect way to wrap it up. Talk about a team that has that has been consistent over the years. This year has been bad, obviously, because of the injuries, but they still can make a major comeback with this draft pick. I still believe they should get James Wiseman to the center position and make a team of Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Andrew Wiggins, Draymond Green, and James Wiseman. I'd say that's a scary team, with Jordan Poole coming off the bench, because I still believe in Poole. I think he's going to be a great player. And Eric Pascal, man,
Hmm.
that's some scary looking team for next year. Actually, are we still going to have the Warriors at the finals, again, because they got that winning culture? And when it comes to teams going all the way through the playoffs, you can have all the talent in the world if you don't have the experience and that cold mind, the winning mentality, you are not going to get there. We've seen major big teams like the Hawks when they had Al Horford, having this stacked roster with players, but without the winning mentality and that thrive and that cold head, they're not gonna make it like a run. And the Warriors have that. And with these pieces and these new pieces, my God, that's scary. That is scary.
I think Kyle brought up a great point that you also hit on, Tiago, as well. Just because today we didn't mention teams like the Clippers, the Bucks, the Warriors, it doesn't mean we're discounting those teams. We know what their greatness is and what they'll be capable of this season if it resumes and seasons moving forward. But our exercise today was kind of looking at teams, that are younger, that have some pieces moving forward that will allow them the opportunity to be successful. So I just want to make the point that we know, the Bucks are the Bucks, the Warriors are the Warriors. Obviously not this year, but the Lakers are the Lakers, and those teams are real and formidable. But if you're looking for future trends and trying to stay on the up and up, you always got to keep an eye out for where the young Bucks are and where the talent's coming up through the league.
Definitely. That's the beauty of the NBA. You can never tell who's going to be the next powerhouse, you know? It can be the Suns. It can be the Suns.
Yeah. So,
Never know. That being said, I think that'll wrap up here our episode number 8, where we kind of took a look at the NBA landscape from the perspective of a general manager. As we said earlier, we looked at a few different criteria. We looked at the roster and the assets that teams have. We looked at the head coach and kind of did a critique of that. We looked at the ownership group and the salary cap situation. We looked at the market they play in, and we also looked at some numbers as to what draft picks they have in this upcoming 2020 draft and drafts that they'll have in the future moving forward. So hope the audience enjoyed this episode today, and we'll be back next Thursday with episode number 9. Till then, see you later.